and you're right, the market does seem to see all news as good news. And I think there is an element of framing going on here. That if you frame, for example, tariffs very high, and then they come in not so high, even though they're remarkably higher than they were, that's meant to be good news. But it is obviously a sizable change. We're doing a similar thing with the One Big Beautiful Bill. It was basically avoiding a $4 trillion hit to the US economy rather than actually adding further impetus to spur on economic growth. And same, I think, with government spending. Stimulus spending is still going up, but that's what they call it. They call it a stimulus, so that's a good word. Really, it's deficit spending. It's money they don't have, and that's growing everywhere, not just in the US, but in a lot of countries around the world. And all of those things, I think, are changes that are not necessarily good, and certainly shouldn't, I think, be taken in a relaxed fashion, that is seeing markets hit all-time highs, pretty much every week we go through this year, as if everything is wonderful. I think the US market is certainly in bubble territory when you look at valuations. I know it's very concentrated around the well-known Magnificent Seven, but even the market as a whole now has broadened a bit more and valuations are pretty high. But that concentration in the market too should, I think, get people to consider the risk that is being taken on board by having your investment in the US. Not only this time round is it concentrated in a fewer number of stocks, but all of those stocks resonate around the same investment theme, AI. Whereas in previous bubbles, that concentration of theme hasn't been as concentrated either. So I think that the risks are certainly growing with regards to a One Big Beautiful Bubble in America. And I think diversification into other areas around the world, whether it be Europe or Asia, is certainly something to consider to reduce your risk of exposure at a time where all risk systems are actually telling you to do the opposite. They're all telling you to get closer to the index, closer to that very concentrated US market in order to reduce risk. My risk model tells me I need to buy more Nvidia, for example. And I think now's the time people need to stop and think carefully about what is it that they need their core allocation to do in order to reduce risk for a range of outcomes that we probably face going forwards. Well, the market certainly is certain there's one outcome, which is going to be perfection, acceleration in growth, no inflation coming back, and AI is going to save all of our problems. And I think there is a wider range of outcomes that we face. One probability is that of a recession, that we get an economic slowdown. There are plenty of evidence to say that economic signals are weakening at the moment, and the market is not prepared for that at all. They are expecting earnings to accelerate this year and particularly again next year. So that would be a shock to the market. I think a more likely outcome, or the most likely outcome we face, is one of a return of inflation. When you've got debt to GDP levels so high across many governments around the world, the only way you get that down is you're not going to address the debt bit, so you have to get the GDP to go up, and you grow that through inflation. And therefore, that too would be a surprise to the market because it causes volatility, as we saw in 2022, as we've seen in the 1970s, and that is not something the market is pricing in a return to volatile times.